Good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state. And one of the reasons why we are a failed state is that ever since the country's independence in 1980, we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. And so, 45 years after independence, we find ourselves still stuck with a corrupt, incompetent, and murderous Zanu PF dictatorship, complete with its equally corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless MDC CCC opposition. I like this picture because it really says it all. With the president asking, is everything in place for the elections? And the SEC chairperson answering, yes, Mr. President, would you like to see the results? Zimbabwe's elections have been so flawed, so illegal. The only logical thing to do was to withdraw. And yet, the opposition have seen it fit to keep participating. Here is a quotation from David Coulthard's book, where he is admitting that the election process is flawed and illegal, but he and his friends have been persisting in participating in these flawed elections out of greed. He has made the confession, and yet the supporters of MDC CCC continue to participate in those flawed elections, knowing fully well that the only logical thing to do is to withdraw. But they participate because they are constantly being conned by the opposition leaders that this time the opposition would win. How anyone can continue to believe they can win rigged elections after 45 years of Zanu PF rigging the elections beggars belief. Why has the penny failed to drop? That is an interesting question. The reason why the opposition leaders themselves continue to participate is, of course, greed, as David Coulthard readily admitted. So we've got to go back to basics. Why are the people failing to realize that we are failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections? We are stuck with this case of rigged elections and bad governance. It goes back to the people themselves. Whether we like to admit it or not, the truth of the matter is the Zimbabwe electorate is not really fit to make democratic decisions, to vote. That is at the heart of our problem. Here is somebody defining the three types of humans, of people out there. And this was clarified by the ancient Greeks, the men and women of Athens, who gave humanity democracy as a system of government.
That there are always three kinds of people in any given society. This threefold distinction has been noted and made by notable sociologists and public intellectuals. But this threefold distinction of the three kinds of people, it was first identified and first stated by the supporters and founders of democracy in ancient Greece. For the Greek people, the people who in many ways gave us the modern civilized world, for the Greek people, the first kind of people in any given society are the idiots. For the Greeks, the idiot is not necessarily someone who is mentally deficient. Rather, for ancient Greek people, the idiot, they said, is someone who is a totally private person, a totally self-centered person, and a totally selfish person. They called him the idiot. The idiot, he is always out for his personal gain and his personal interests. He does not have a public philosophy. He has no knowledge, no skill, no character, and no virtues to be able to live and to be able to contribute in a flourishing society and community. He's all out for his personal pleasures and for his personal treasures. And the Greeks said that the idiot was just an upgraded barbarian. The first kind of person, the idiot. But the Greeks also said that there is a second kind of people in any given society. And the Greeks called these people the tribes people. When we say tribes people, we don't necessarily mean the fact of belonging to a certain tribe, which is a good thing. But when they use the word tribes people, the Greeks meant a tribal and a tribalistic mentality. And the Greeks said that tribes people are those people who are not able to think beyond their small tribe or their small groups. For tribes people, their primary allegiance, their only allegiance, and their ultimate allegiance is to their tribe. Their tribe is their God, and their religion is tribalism. And tribes people, the Greeks said, are always afraid of things that are different, that are a little alien to them. They are always suspicious and fearful. And they always dealt with different people and difficult situations with intimidation, with force, and with violence. And the Greeks also said that the ideal person for tribes people is the warrior, because tribes people are a war-making people. Their ideal is the warrior. But it was not so for the Greeks. For the Greeks, there was another kind of people, another kind of a person, and that was the ideal person. And the Greeks called this ideal person the citizen. The citizen. And here when we use the word citizen, we are not talking about legal status or political status. We are talking about the idea and the ideal of citizenship. And who is the citizen? The citizen, according to the Greeks, is someone who has the skills and the knowledge to live a public life, who is able to live a life of civility. The citizen recognizes that he or she is a member of a commonwealth and thus strives for the common good. That is the citizen. The citizen, yes, he knows he or she knows his or her rights in a society, but he or she also knows his or her responsibilities to society. The citizen can fight for his rights, but always, always with an awareness of and with a respect for the rights and interests of others, of their neighbors, of the smallest of minorities, and of the worst of their enemies. And it is citizens, the Greeks said, that make up a civilized society, because citizens settle their differences with civility. So they produce a civilized society, a society that truly lives up to the name, to the meaning of the name society.
I'll stop it there. I think it is important that we should accept the reality on the ground. Do we have citizens in Zimbabwe? Of the three types of people, I think it'll be correct to say we have all three types: the idiots, the tribesmen, and the citizens. The question then is, in what proportion? I would say the majority, the overwhelming majority of Zimbabweans out there are either tribesmen at best, or else they're just idiots. Here is a video clip of the type of supporters we have in Zimbabwe when you're looking at the two main parties. Here's the first one. That is Zanu PF supporters. Here is Chamisa Chete Chete Brigade.
Mananga matete, mananga matete, mananga matete, mananga matete, mananga matete, mananga matete.
Well, if the truth be said, the two groups are not different at all. They have one thing in common. They are all tribes. They've got a tribesman mentality. They support their party. Their leader is their God. We have had problems with rigged elections. If you think about the Zanu PF supporters, they will not be bothered that the elections are rigged, because rigged elections have delivered Zanu PF government. That's all they care about. They don't care about the rights of other people, that other other people are being denied the right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. They don't understand that. They don't care about it. On the other side, we have Chamisa supporters. If one was to ask those Chamisa Chete Brigade, why is it that 45 years after independence, Zanu PF is still able to rig elections? They will not be able to tell you. They really don't understand what is it that constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. And in this particular case, they don't understand that they have been actually risking everything to vote for Chamisa and company to get into power with the primary purpose that they would implement the reforms and stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. So 25 years since the founding of the MDC, the Movement for Democratic Change, if these people did not have the tribesman mentality, and in some cases actually becomes this personality cult mentality, they would be asking themselves, we elected you 25 years ago, and you had the golden opportunity, particularly during the GNU, to implement the reforms. Why is it that Zanu PF is still able to rig elections? But they don't ask that because of their tribesman mentality. Whether we like to admit it or not, we are stuck. The ancient Greeks, 2,500 years ago, realized that there were those three types of persons. And for the ancient Greeks, only the citizen had the right to vote, because the citizen could be trusted to be diligent and objective and hold the leaders to account. They see the bigger picture. Their allegiance is not to an individual or the party, but to the state, to the nation, to the Commonwealth. If a leader has failed to implement even one token reform in 25 years to make sure that we've got free, fair, and credible elections, so that we can get out of this hell on earth we find ourselves in, surely it makes sense to question that individual and hold him to account. But the Chamisa Chete Brigade will never do that, because their allegiance is to the party, and Chamisa is their God. And one of the things that has been driving some of these Chamisa Chete Brigade nuts is to hear Chamisa accused of failing to implement any meaningful democratic reforms in 25 years, including the 5 years in the GNU. Chamisa lied about plugging the vote rigging loopholes. That is something that you don't need to belong to a party. You don't need to understand politics to understand that that was a lie. He said at 1 minute, at one breath, on one occasion, that he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes and the party was going to win. The opposition party was going to win. He claimed that Mnangagwa was not going to have any chance of rigging the elections. He claimed that. a few days before the voting, he was the one claiming that he was forming a new cabinet because he was going to win. CCC was going to win big. He even evoked the name of God.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifoiri. Plan ya Mwari haifoiri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
Chamisa lied. But when you're talking to some of his supporters, they cannot accept that. The tragedy is, with that kind of mentality, you can never bring about meaningful change. Zimbabwe needs opposition leaders who will implement the democratic reforms and get the nation out of this mess. That's what we need. But when you've got 2 million plus individuals whose tribal mentality is tying them to MDC CCC, and the other balance of the electorate are tied to Zanu PF. And you've given those people the vote. Where are you going to get the vote to elect a competent opposition? You're stuck. We have a problem with the electorate. We need an electorate that has the mentality of the citizen, that is diligent and objective and knowledgeable enough to be able to say, yes, I continue to support the opposition, but I must support the opposition that will deliver those reforms to stop Zanu PF breaking the elections, and not just be blindly loyal to the opposition that is there now. Because that is the definition of being stuck. We are stuck with an opposition that is actually Zanu PF Team B in all but name. They failed to implement even one token reform, even when they had the golden opportunity to do so during the GNU. They've also been participating in flawed elections, knowing fully well that Zanu PF was rigging, and that participating will only give Zanu PF legitimacy. And yet, the supporters, because of their tribesman mentality, all that is water off a duck's back. They can't see that. Their allegiance is to the opposition, MDC, and that leadership is their God. They cannot do anything wrong. That, I believe, is the reason why we are stuck. It's interesting to note that the Greeks, 2,500 years ago, were able to make that distinction of the 3 types of people, and to be able to say, okay, we'll give the vote to the citizen. Meanwhile, we'll make a conscientious effort to educate people to make sure that they are able to be citizens and can contribute to the building of society. If the truth be said, both Zanu PF and CCC MDC leadership, they are not interested in educating the voters. If anything at all, each one of them is trying to keep their supporters happy by brainwashing them to the point where they are utterly useless. The competition now is between one group with a tribesman mentality against another with a tribesman mentality. And some of them have been locked into a position where the tribe, Zanu PF, can do nothing wrong. If anything goes wrong, you blame the opposition, or in the case of Zanu PF, the West, who imposed the sanctions. And with the MDC CCC, they will never accept that the party has done anything wrong. They blame Zanu PF. And if you try to point out what the opposition have done wrong, you're immediately labeled a Zanu PF agent or worse. You hate Chamisa. You are jealous of Chamisa. Well, I can honestly say I'm not jealous of Chamisa. And saying that Chamisa lied about plugging vote rigging loopholes to con people to participate in 2023 elections is not hurting Chamisa, it's speaking the truth. And unless people can rise above that, Chamisa is going to con them again to participate in flawed 2028 elections, giving Zanu PF legitimacy and perpetuating the dictatorship. That is the truth. Thank you very much. Have a good night.